Hello everyone, welcome back to Triad Travelogues. I am Richard, and I'm coming at you today from the outskirts of Shanghai, China, to talk to you a little bit about being sick abroad. Now, as you can probably tell by the way that my voice sounds, I'm a little bit sick today. Not very sick, just a little bit sick. For the last couple of days, I've had kind of a upper respiratory thing going on, and I just feel kind of crappy. But it got me thinking about being sick. And you know, I've been traveling in Asia for the last 5 years. I'm 35 and I started traveling right around the time I turned 30. I'm originally from the United States. And in that period of time that I've been traveling, I've been sick a lot. And I never got sick when I lived in the States, ever. I was very healthy in the States, but it seems like now that I'm in Asia, I get sick a lot. So I have a ton of stories about being sick. And I thought, well, today would be a good day, since I'm a little bit sick, to tell you a couple of the stories about times that I've been really sick in Asia. I want to point one other thing out. If you can see this, you guys can see this, right? This is my my Hawaiian shirt that I bought in the States before I started to travel. And I put it on one day, you know, right after I got married. And my wife said she was just disgusted by it. And she said, that is the ugliest shirt I've ever seen in my life. And it literally makes me feel sick to my stomach, like I'm gonna throw up. And so I never wore it again because I felt self-conscious about it. I'm not really a fashion person, you know, but like lay off. Like, that's so horrible to say to your husband, you know. But I'm wearing it today in honor of my wife, and also because it's sort of connected to that being sick thing. It's loosely connected, but it made sense at the time. And now that I'm saying it, I feel kind of regret, because it kind of is just stupid. But anyway, so I thought about this, and I'm gonna tell you about two of the times that I have been very, very sick abroad. One was in Kathmandu, Nepal, where I lived for the better part of the year, for the better part of a year. And the other one was like a year and a half ago in China. Both very serious illnesses, great stories, okay? So stay tuned, like, don't stop the video, don't click away. Jesus, don't click away. Okay, so the very first place that I went when I started traveling was Kathmandu, Nepal. And at the time, I was a really idealistic retard. And I thought, man, I'm going to, oh, hello, hi, you got a problem? Dude's like, oh my God, ah, ah. Anyway, what was I saying? Okay, so the very first place I moved was Kathmandu, Nepal, and I wanted to help people, and I wanted to make a difference in the world, because back then, I used to be a really great person. I was a good person. I was a humanitarian. It was before I hated everyone in the world. And at that time, I was like, I'm gonna go help some people. And I had been a teacher before in Baltimore, so I moved to Nepal to volunteer at an orphanage for nearly a year. And while I was there, I got sick, and I got sick a lot. I was always sick. In Nepal, like in that part of the world, like that subcontinent, Nepal and India, you just tend to, you know, you get sick, but I think that for most people from the States, or most people from the West, or from developed countries, the default condition that your body is in India or in Nepal is like this kind of low-level sort of flu. So like the whole time that you're there, I mean, at least it was like this for me. The whole time I was there, I just had this kind of low-level flu. I never felt quite right. But there were times when I dipped much, much lower than that, and I got really sick. And I'm not going to go through and tell you about all of those times, but I am going to tell you about one in particular, and it is actually the most sick that I've ever been in my life, and hopefully the most sick that I will ever be in my life. Okay, So in Nepal, you don't drink the water, okay? And the reason you don't drink the water, like all you gotta do is really, you can go and look up like pictures of the Ganges River in India. And it's like sacred and holy, but it's filled with corpses. Like it's filled with human corpses. Like they literally, they put their dead, not everybody does, some of the dead are cremated, but a lot of people, if they can't afford cremation, they just throw dead people into the water. So the water is filled with holy dead bodies and holy like cows. Like I kid you not. And you'll see people in these rivers bathing and brushing their teeth and like using the water to wash their face. And this is the water that people drink. I mean, just that's the general condition of the drinking water in India and in Nepal. And when I was in Nepal, I made, you know, we had a water filter in the orphanage, and I made sure to always drink filtered water and sometimes to drink boiled water. You know, I wasn't really that weird about like eating or drinking things like from roadside vendors. I never really had a problem with that. I was pretty, just whatever came my way I would try. But one thing I never did is I never drank the water because I didn't want to die. Now in Nepal they have a lot of street vendor snacks, and some of them are good and some of them are bad, and some of them will make your tummy full and you'll be happy, and some of them will make you die. And so there was this one, like, it's not a dish, it's like a, I don't know how to describe it. It's like a little hollowed out shell. It doesn't have anything inside, and it's like a crispy fried shell thing. And they take it and they poke a hole in it and they fill it with potatoes and peas and like chopped up vegetables. And they serve it to you like a basket of these things with a soup. And you dip them in the soup and you eat them. Now, I had heard stories about people getting sick eating these things. Like they're notorious for making people sick. But I tried them many times and I liked them. They tasted good and I never got sick. There was this one time, and I was at the orphanage, and one of the women that ran the orphanage, she brought the kids this big basket of these things. I forgot what they were called, but she offered me one and I took it, and I didn't even think about it because, you know, I'd done this a bunch of times. I dipped it in the soup and I bit into it, and I swear to God, right when I bit into it, immediately as I swallowed it, I knew that I was screwed. I knew, just, I don't know how to describe it, but like my body just knew, oh shit, you should not have just done that. And I put the thing down, the little shell thing down, and I was like, oh man, I'm gonna be sick. 5 minutes later, I was puking up like black stuff. And this was not, and you know what it was? I'm pretty sure what it was the water that they used to make the soup was not filtered. I think it was just tap water. But man, that water will make you sick fast. Nobody else got sick. None of the kids at the orphanage got sick. The adults that ate it, they didn't get sick because they're used to it. They drink the water, man. The kids would drink the water right out of the lake. But I wasn't used to it, and I got very, very sick. And it was a sickness that lasted about 2 weeks. And during that 2 weeks, I basically just laid in my bed in a fetal position and tried not to move. You know how when you're really, really sick, if you just move a little bit, and your whole body like starts to do that sort of vertigo thing, and everything starts to spin and you throw up. And I was just, I didn't have anything left in me to throw up. I was so sick, I wasn't even going to the bathroom to throw up. I was just throwing up all over the floor in my room. So my room was filled with vomit. I was in a fetal position, sometimes on the floor, sometimes on the bed, just trying not to move. And when I say I was sick, I mean like I was sick. It was kind of similar to an acid trip, And at one point, at the height of it, well, you know, when I was like the most delusional, I was having visual and auditory hallucinations. And I was laying in my bed, and I could see all of these auras. Like, I could see my body, like I had risen up above my body, and I could see my body laying in the bed, and I could see 7 auras. They were these auras that were surrounding me, like layers, 7 different colors, and they were, I don't know, they were my, like, my body's, the spiritual part of my body. And I could see that up above these layers, these auras, there was this, like, rod, like it's kind of like a really long sword, and it was piercing. It was doing its best to kind of pierce through the auras to get to my body. And in that condition that I was in, I just recognized that what was happening was that sword was like the spiritual part of my immune system, and it was trying to break through the spiritual barriers so it could get into my body and like start working and killing whatever it was that was destroying the inside of my body. And it was a very profound religious experience. I don't know if any of you watching this have ever been so sick that, sorry, that truck is really loud. That's another guy staring at me like, ah, look at that, ah. Anyway, I don't know if any of you have ever been so sick that you are, it almost feels like comforting. Like it's kind of a high. Like I was so sick that I felt like I was in a womb, and I was just being enveloped by this presence that kept me safe and sort of coddled me. But wow, I was sick. And you know, I've told people this story before, and a lot of people ask me, why didn't you just go to the hospital? And I'm gonna tell you why right now. Because about 2 weeks before this happened, I actually had been to a hospital in that village that I lived in. I lived in a little village called Phatung, kind of on the outside of Kathmandu. And one of my kids got really sick, and I ended up taking that kid to the hospital. We took a bus to the hospital, and I got to see what a hospital in Nepal is like. And I feel like if I had gone there to get treatment, I probably would have died. First of all, the inside of the hospital was absolutely filthy. It was just covered in grime, and there were bugs. I mean, it's just like pretty much any place in Nepal. Like the restaurants are grimy, the houses are grimy. I'm not saying anything against Nepal, okay? I love Nepal. I'm just saying it's a really, really dirty place. And when I took the kid to go get seen by the doctor, there were people outside. Like in Nepal, a lot of people just stand around. They just stand around and don't do anything all day. And there were people standing outside the hospital, and they just sort of saw me, and they just followed us into the hospital. And when we went into the doctor's office, there were people, like spectators, that would come in and just stand there. So the room was filled with people just standing around staring at us. And when the doctor came in to look at the kid, he didn't make them leave. So there were just all these people, just sort of like, it was just, there wasn't even a door to the room. So you could just walk in and just chill there, smoke a cigarette, and watch the doctor interact with patients inside their hospital room. And I did not want to deal with that. I felt like, look, if I'm gonna die, and I was pretty certain I was gonna die. This was around Thanksgiving, actually. I may have told this story before. There's another video. There's a video on my channel called Food in China That Might Kill You. It's kind of a rant that I did about being sick, about food poisoning in China. If you wanna, you should check that one out. Anyway, so yeah, that was my experience with being really sick in Nepal. There were a bunch of different times when I was in Nepal that I got sick. And being sick in Nepal generally involves fever, diarrhea. And when I say diarrhea, if you think you've had diarrhea before, you have no idea, okay? Like, that it's even possible that a human body can hold that much sludgy whatever it was that was coming out of my butthole every time I got sick in Nepal is unbelievable. Like, you spend so much time in the toilet expelling this horrific sludgy fecal, I don't know what the hell was coming out of me. I think some of it was alive. It was like conscious. It was like, "Rah!" And yeah. So yeah, fever, diarrhea, vomiting. It's pretty intense and pretty terrible. The whole time I was in Nepal, I never once went to the hospital for myself, and I'm proud of that. Eventually, I recovered from whatever I had, and everything was okay. So flash forward a few years, and I'm in China, in Shanghai. This was actually a couple of years ago. This is another time that I've been really sick in Asia. So this is about a year after the baby was born, and everything was normal. I was chilling, being the coolest foreigner in all of Shanghai, you know, par for the course. And I started having a little bit of irritation in my ball sack. Well, it was in my ball sack, but it wasn't my ball sack, it was my balls, okay? My balls started to feel kind of funky. They started to feel kind of weird. And I ignored it because I'm a guy, and I thought, well, hopefully it'll just go away, you know? I don't want to deal with the ball thing, you know, whatever. So after a couple of days, it was one testicle, it was my left testicle, started to really hurt. And it started to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and it was like, it's kind of embarrassing saying this on YouTube, so like the whole world has access to this story, but whatever. My left testicle was like 3 times the size of my right testicle. And eventually I thought, well, this is really bad. I'm probably gonna need to get some kind of medical help. But I didn't. I waited another couple of days thinking, well, maybe they'll just, it'll just shrink. And it never did, it just kept getting bigger. So finally I approached my wife, who is a doctor. She's not a ball sack doctor, but she's somewhat familiar with my ball sack. And so I basically approached her and I said, hey, babe, something wrong with one of my balls. And I showed it to her and she was horrified. And yeah. So anyway, she basically told me, you need to go see a doctor like now, like today. And I said, no, you know what, I'll make an appointment. I'll go see a doctor tomorrow. So we made an appointment at the hospital. And by this time, I had come to know Chinese hospitals, because when my wife was pregnant, we had kind of toured some of the hospitals that are available for delivery, to give birth. And I realized very early on that public hospitals here are absolutely disgusting, and they're disgusting in a different way than the Nepali hospitals that I saw. The Nepali hospital was grimy and gross, but the public hospital I saw with my wife when she was in her first trimester was it was kind of dirty on the inside. But what is weird about it is, like, people, like, I saw dudes smoking cigarettes in the maternity ward, like straight up just like in the waiting area, just lighting up cigarettes and smoking them around like pregnant women, and nobody stopped them. There are people walking around with cups, like uncovered cups of their own urine. There are cotton balls with blood, like bloody cotton balls all over the floor, because people would wait in line. They would get shots, and then like they would take the cotton balls and use them to clean the blood, and then when they were done with them, they didn't throw them in the trash, they just threw them all over the floor. So the floor was filled with bloody cotton balls. There were people walking around with open containers of their own urine. There were people smoking cigarettes. And, you know, I just thought, man, you know, if I ever get sick, I'm not gonna come to this place. So when I did get sick and I needed to go to the hospital, I ended up contacting an international hospital. And it's actually a hospital that we've been to several times with the baby now. And it is called, and the name of this hospital is just blanking on me now. It's just a blank. You know what, I'm gonna write it down when I'll remember later, and I'll write it down when I'm editing this video, because whatever. I try to do these walk and talks in like one shot, you know? Like, but then I always mess up and I look stupid. And then my 260 subscribers, they're all gonna be like, this guy's retarded. Why am I subscribed to this idiot and watching his boring, stupid, uninformed, unscripted, retard content? Anyway. So, anyway, I went to this hospital, and it was quite embarrassing, but I did what I had to do. I saw a doctor, and it was a woman, of course, and she said, and I told her, she was like, what's wrong? And I told her, well, something wrong with my balls. Well, I didn't say that. I said, I used professional terminology. I was like, yes, doctor, my left testicle seems to have swollen about 3 times the size of my right testicle, and I'm very concerned that I might lose that testicle. And she's like, okay, take off your pants. And I was like, okay, I'm about to expose myself to, you know, an older woman. Cool, whatever, you know. This might be fun. Please don't have an erection. Please don't have an erection. Please don't have an erection. And so I took my pants off, and I did not have an erection. As a matter of fact, you know, I have a generously sized member, okay? It's big, it's very big. It's very, very big. It's not too big, but it's, you know, it's like, yeah, like people see it and they're like, oh my God, you know? But it was like that big. Because when I think as soon as she said, take off your pants, it was like, and it tried to hide like inside of my, whatever, my genital regions. It tried to shrink up and like, and just hide. You know, so anyway, so I pulled down my pants and I showed her my balls. And at this point, my right ball was not even, like, you couldn't even see it. It was just like, it was, all you could see was this giant grapefruit-sized, festering, infected, horrific, disgusting, just awful-looking, just ball, misshapen. It felt like a lump of, like, it felt like a ball of worms, like earthworms wriggling around, infected and throbbing. And she said, wow, that looks really angry. And I was like, yeah, I think that's a good word, angry. Oh, whoa, look at this, that crab, look at that. See, that crab had a worse day than what I'm talking about right now, man. Jesus. Anyway, so I was like, yeah, that's an angry testicle. And so she said, we're gonna do an x-ray. And so I basically put my pants on, and then I went to wait in this waiting area. And finally, these 2 women, of course, all women, these 2 women, like they're nurses, they come in and they're like, okay, we're gonna do an ultrasound. And so I said, okay. So they took this, like, you know that ultrasound juice, whatever it is, and they rubbed it all over my balls. And I was like, please don't get an erection, please don't get an erection, please don't get an erection. Now, they were younger women. They were in their like 20s, whereas the doctor was in her 50s. So, you know, before it was like that, but when they were putting the stuff on, it was kind of like, you know, I'm still not comfortable, but I could grow a little bit, you know, just kind of pop out and see what's going on. And so, but there was no erection. This was not a sexy process, okay? And so they put the little, you know, I was laying in this bed, and up above the bed was like this, I swear to God, this TV set, and it was like big. It was a big TV, so it was like I was kind of watching a movie, and on the movie screen I could see the inside of my ball sack and 2 balls, and one ball was much bigger than the other, and it looked just indescribably horrible. It looked like something from a horror movie. And one of the nurses, she points to the screen, and she says, "Those are your testicles." And I said, "Yes, I kind of gathered that." And she said, "You see the one on the left? It shouldn't look like that." And I said, "Yeah, I sort of gathered that too." And she said, "You have epididymitis." And I was like, "Am I gonna die?" And she said, "No, but what we need to do is we need to give you a shot of, well, actually, it wasn't her that told me that. It was the doctor later on that told me that I needed to have an antibiotic shot. But first I needed to have my blood taken. I may be telling this kind of out of order because my memory is a little bit foggy because of the painkillers they gave me later on. But they gave me, they took my blood, and I cried like a little bitch because I'm scared of needles. And then they gave me a shot of an antibiotic, and I cried like a little bitch because I don't like blood, I don't like needles. You know, I have tattoos, and I never had a problem with getting tattoos. But something about like the needle going into the vein and extracting blood really bothers me. And anyway, the point of this story is they shot me up with antibiotics, and she said, "Would you like painkillers?" And I said, "Hell yes, I would love some painkillers. How many can you give me?" And she ended up giving me 2 boxes of some kind of an opiate painkiller. And I spent the next 2 weeks doing stuff that I don't remember. But, and I had to go back to the hospital and get another shot later on because the first one didn't work or whatever, and they gave me oral, well, the nurses didn't give me oral, that's not what I mean. They gave me oral antibiotics as well to take. So eventually it cleared up and all was well. But the difference between those 2 stories, I mean, there's lots of differences, but when I was in Nepal, I made a decision not to go to the hospital. And when I was in China, I didn't have the option to make that decision. Like, at first I thought, I'm not gonna go to the hospital, but eventually it was so bad. And when you're dealing with your balls, any dude can relate to this. You know, I was an idiot for not going sooner. Because epididymitis is like an infection that if it's not treated, you literally could lose your ball. But it's okay, I have both my balls. They still work, I think. I'm married, so how would I know if they work or not? Anyway, that's 2 stories. I could go on forever about being sick, but I want to conclude this by telling you, the viewer, you know, I feel like I tell these stories, but what I really need is a moral to my story. I need some kind of a suggestion to give my viewers. Like, I need to say, this is, you know, like, this is what you should do. If you're in this situation like I was, this is what you need to do. You know what I mean? Like I need to be more helpful. Instead of just telling people about my balls for 15 minutes, I need to tell you, I need to give you advice on how to deal with being sick abroad. Because if you leave your home country like I did, oh man, sorry, that noise was really loud. If you leave your home country like I did and you venture off into some unknown exotic territory like I did, and you're basically some kind of incarnation of Indiana Jones like I am, you're gonna get sick. It's gonna happen, and you're gonna need to deal with it. So all of my experience, and I am an expert world traveler. They say that you have to do something for 10,000 hours to be an expert at a thing. And I've been traveling for well over 10,000 hours, so I can reasonably and responsibly refer to myself as a world travel expert. So I'm gonna give you some advice for when you get sick, and this will prevent you from dying, and it will prevent you from being catatonic. It will prevent you from slipping into a coma. So if you remember anything from any of my videos, or you take anything away from this video, I want you to take what I'm about to say with you, because it will save your life. And it will give you a reason to subscribe to my channel and give this video a big thumbs up, and to leave a nice comment down below. Richard, thank you for giving me that advice. It was the best advice that I'd ever seen or heard before, and it actually did prevent me from dying. Smiley face. I subscribe to your channel, and I'm going to send you $10,000 in the mail. Okay? So, my advice is as follows.